wow, new series, Pastor Charlie's on sabbatical. So they said, hey, Stephen, you share a last name. You can go up there. And because of that, in Pastor Charlie's honor, I decided that we will do 7 points with sub-points. And this gathering ends at 11:30, right? We have an hour? No, we're gonna do our best to get you guys through here, the stuff that God has for you. I'm excited to hang out with you today. This is fun for me. I love you guys. I love this church. I love getting to hang out. This is a little bit different way than I usually do. The youth hopefully saw the sign on the door upstairs that says, come downstairs. That's where I have been for a couple of years now, hanging out with them. But I love you guys. And we're going to start this series and talk about 7 habits for becoming spiritually healthy. 7 habits or disciplines. I'm beginning this series, and something you need to keep in mind is the simple, not easy, right? These things say simple, but they're not always easy. And as we're talking through these 7 things, you don't have to go, oh, wow, I got 7 things. However am I going to do that? Work it out between you and Jesus. Maybe there's 1, 2, however many, but say, okay, I'm going to commit to doing something, because during this series, we're going to look at how we can go from the life that we're living, which may be good, to a better life with Jesus, because what Jesus has for us is always better than what we can do ourselves. And I'm excited for the race. There's a race at the end of this series. Did you guys know that on June 1st, right? Pastor Kevin, June 1st? June 1st, there's a 5K. And I have not, are any of you runners? Anyone like to run? You guys like to run? In college, we had to run. I went to Oral Roberts University, where PE was a requirement. Every semester, you got graded on your physical health. Mind, body, and spirit. They said, we're educating the whole person. So they would literally grade you on your physical health. And one of the ways that they would grade you is you had to run 2 miles every semester. And they would give you times based on your age bracket to run these 2 miles in. So I thought, oh, you know what? It'll be cool. I'm going to look up how fast I need to run this 5K, per mile at the age bracket that I would be if I was at ORU today. Well, when I was at ORU, I had to run 2 miles in 13 minutes or less for an A. 6.5-minute miles. I remember doing it the first time, and I thought the entire time I was sprinting. That's what it felt like. But then you watch the Olympics and you see people run like marathons and they're doing like 3-minute miles, and you're like, that's gross. Like, how do you do that, right? Well, I looked up my time for what it would be as a 33-year-old, and I was like, okay, surely, it's going to be good. 1 more minute, 14 minutes. 7-minute miles. They're like, for you to get an A at ORU, if I were to go to ORU today for a Master's of Divinity or a PhD or something like that, they would say, you have to run a mile in 7 minutes or less, Stephen. And I went, there is no way that would happen. And people try to tell me, they're like, no, running's fun. After a certain point, like this thing kicks in your brain and it starts feeling good, like these dopamines. And I'm like, you're a liar. It's never happened. I've never felt that while running. Sometimes when I'm working out, I'm like, oh, okay, this kind of feels good. I think it's my brain going, we're in so much pain, we're just turning off the receptors, right? And so they're just like, you're going to feel it later. But right now, we're protecting ourselves from feeling any more hurt. But if discipline was easy, they wouldn't call it discipline. And so not everyone chooses to do it, because when we choose to do something, when we choose to confront things about ourselves, when we choose to do things a different way, we can start to see things actually change. But it takes a choice. We're in a race, whether we think we are or not. This Run the Race series, the race called life. And we get to choose how we are going to run this race. My son Amos, he's 2.5 years old, and he has 2 favorite foods. 2. Chicken nuggets, specifically the dinosaur variety. Right? We'll go out to a restaurant or something and we'll get him chicken, and he looks at it and he's like, not eating that. Like, what's wrong? It's a chicken nugget. He's like, doesn't have a tail or a head or anything else that looks like a dinosaur, so I'm not eating it. Like, what? And his second favorite food is hot dog. I don't know. At some point in his life, he's going to try, God help me, he's going to try a ribeye steak. And he's going to go, Dad, what have you been doing? You've been feeding me chicken nuggets my whole life, and you had this the entire time? I'm going to go, I tried. It's kind of the same thing with God. We get really fixated on things that we think are good, we think are the best, that we think we like, and God's got something better for us, but because we're not sure about it, or it takes some trust, or it takes a choice to get there, to choose to do it, we go, I'm going to stay where I think this is good. And God's going, oh, but I got something so much better for you. So this series is about that. Our verse for this series is Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. It's all about Jesus. Keeping our eyes on Jesus, the things that he has for us. We're not going to do these habits. We're not going to do this stuff that we talk about just to make ourselves feel good. We're doing it so that we can get connected to Jesus and see the better life that he has for us. You see, there's a story that Jesus told, Luke chapter 15, of the prodigal son. And this younger son, it's always the younger kids, but the younger son, I'm the oldest in my family, so the second half of this story is for me. But the first half, the younger son goes to the dad and says, Dad, I want what's mine. I want my inheritance. Dad's like, what? What are you talking about? I'm still alive. You get your inheritance when the parents die. He goes, no, I want it now. It's like, are you sure? Give it to me. So the dad gives the son the inheritance. And what does he do? He moves away immediately to a faraway land. Not like down the street, not like, hey, I'm going to come see you on the weekends for dinner or anything like that. He moves far away, wants nothing to do with his family. And the Bible says, or Jesus talks about how when he's in this faraway country, he spends all the money on wild living, which you can fill in the blank in your own mind of what wild living is, but the Bible, Jesus really wanted to make it clear that paying for sex and prostitutes was certainly one of those things. So he's setting the stage that this son is not doing what he should be doing. He's not living a life, but he is living a life that the world would say, ooh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Today, we would call this guy an influencer. He absolutely would have had a YouTube channel and would have been documenting everything in his life and talked about, hey, look at my life. Look at me. Look at what I have. Would have surrounded himself with all these people who want to get in on it and go, whoa. Yes, you have what the world says is good. After a year of living like this, he's spent all the money and a famine hits the land, a recession, right? No one's ever gone through one of those before. And everything is gone. No one has anything. And he has lost all the money. All his friends are gone. Everyone's abandoned him. And he has to go, he gets a job finally, and it's feeding the pigs. Now, for a Jewish person, feeding the pigs is about as low as you can get. It would be something that absolutely would have been detestable, unfathomable to someone to stoop so low as to be a pig feeder. And not only that, but he looks at what he's feeding the pigs and he goes, wow, that looks pretty good. Asks people for things and they give him nothing. Finally, he comes to his senses and he's like, aren't even the hired servants in my dad's household fed better than this? Wow, I've messed up. You know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to apologize to my dad because I've sinned against him, I've sinned against God. And maybe, not as a son, not as part of the family, but maybe he'll take me back as a hired servant. So he makes his way back to his dad. And while he's still a long way off, Jesus says the dad sees him and he runs. Again, something that would not have happened, was not normal to do in Jesus' time. A rich person did not run. It says he runs to his son, embraces him. And the son gives the spiel, Dad, I've sinned against God, I've sinned against you, I'm not worthy to be called your son. Would you hire me on as one of your servants? Dad's like, what are you talking about? Puts a robe around him, basically saying, you're part of the family. Then he takes off the signet ring and he gives it to him. That's like the credit card back in the day. If you did that ring, you're now with the authority of the dad, right? Anything that ring touches, dad was now responsible for. It says, even though you spent all that wealth, all my wealth, here's the ring. And then he tells everyone, hey, let's have a party. Kill the fattened calf because this son of mine who is lost is found, who is dead is now alive. He tried to do it on his own. He thought he was doing what was good, what was going to bring him happiness. And then when it was all gone, he was left with a choice. Either I can keep doing this, or maybe there's something better. And wherever you're at here today, whatever step, God is saying, hey, there's always something better that God has for us. And as soon as we choose to step near to him, he will run in our direction to us, to meet us and get us there. So these are the 7 habits. Habit number one is love Jesus supremely. He's number one. We got to love Jesus supremely. It's like, is that a habit? I thought it's just, it's kind of like a no-brainer. No. Love is a choice. It's something we have to choose to do. We have to choose to put Jesus at number one. We have to choose to love Jesus above all other things. Listen to what he says in Luke chapter 14. If you want to be my follower, you must love me more than your own father, mother, wife, children, brothers, and sisters. Yes, more than your own life. Otherwise, you cannot be my disciple. It's like, come on, Jesus. You gave me this blessing. I've got this wonderful wife. I've got these wonderful kids. I look at them and then I read this and I'm like, oh. Love Jesus supremely. You see, our spiritual health is measured by love. Not by how much we know about the Bible, not how much we know about Jesus. Guys, I grew up, my dad has been a pastor my whole life. I know every story in the Bible. I knew it backwards, forwards, sideways growing up. You could have asked me a story. Do you know there's a story in the Bible about a talking donkey? Reagan, you knew that one? Yeah, Shrek stole it from the Bible. They just added the flying part. But if you don't, read it, you wouldn't know. But I knew everything. But it wasn't until I made a choice to actually get to know Jesus that my life started to change. I had traded knowing Jesus for knowing about Jesus. I had thought that was a good thing. But this week I talked about a song called "Give Me Jesus," and in there, one of the verses is, "Once I've tasted and seen of your goodness, nothing else can satisfy." And you guys, there's no way that I can describe it, because once you experience Jesus, once you've truly had this experience where you go, okay, I get it. It does something inside of you that changes you, and you go, whoa, there is nothing else that can ever satisfy. And our spirits were created to be connected to Jesus. So there's always, when they're not, there's always something that's longing to be connected to Jesus. So when we choose to love Jesus supremely, not just know about him, not just serve in the church, not just do good things for our community, but to love Jesus supremely. It's the first habit, the first discipline that we can do to move us into spiritual healthiness. What we love the most is the thing that we worship. The Bible would call this idols. And when we think of an idol, you think of like the talking head from Night of the Museum that wants gum, right? That stone head. And we look at that and we go, that's easy. Thing's dumb. I'm not going to worship that. That's not what we're talking about. You can take a spiritual inventory of your life and look at, where does my time, my resources, my money, my stuff, where does that go? And if that's not to Jesus, there may be an idol that's sitting there at number one. And one of the tricky things is not only does Jesus have to be number one, but sometimes we'll have this mountaintop experience. We'll experience Jesus. We'll go, great, I'm in, Jesus, I love you supremely. You are my number one. Then we leave him there, and we go and focus on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Go, okay, Jesus, thank you. Now I got to do what I'm going to do. To love Jesus supremely is to make him number one and bring him into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Don't put him on the pedestal and then leave him there and shut the door and go, okay, that's your room. The rest of this is mine. No, it doesn't work like that. Habit number 2, meet with God daily. My body has changed since I was 18 years old. It's been 15 years since then, and people keep telling me, just wait until you're 40. My whole life, people have told me, wait until you're married, wait until you have a kid, wait until you have 2 kids. They all happen, right? And then there's always something else that they get told that you have to wait for. I noticed that when I was younger, taking like a break, you know Costco sells Oreos in like a 300 pack? It's a box. And they're sneaky because it's not if you buy it at the grocery store, it has that tab that keeps the Oreos fresh. When you buy it from Costco, if you open that tab up, you got to eat every single Oreo in that roll, or else they're going to be bad by the next day. And I used to be like, challenge accepted. I'd grab 5 of those rolls. I'd sit on the couch, I'd play video games, and I'd just eat them. And guess what? Nothing would happen to me. Not a thing. I was 150 pounds, and there wasn't enough food in the world for me to eat that was going to change that by anything. Then something happened, and that's not true anymore. And so I've been doing some different things to try and combat that, because now if I were to sit down and eat 5 rows of Oreos, I'd be sick out of my mind for a week, and it would not be good. So I started to work out. And I was like, okay, this is good. But I noticed that when I was working out, I wasn't doing my first 15 minutes of the day. So I said, okay, I got to get up earlier. So I've been trying different times of waking up. As early as 4:35 in the morning, which jury's still out on that one, to as late as 7, which don't do that, that's too late. But right now, I'm at the 5:15 mark, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Because I'm able to get up, I'm able to have my quiet time with God, I'm able to say, this, God, is your nice time, where I'm going to connect with you before I do anything else. Before I do anything else, I'm going to connect with you. Then I'm going to work out, do the stuff, get physically there, but meet with God daily. Proverbs 8:34, blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. Things are going to change even in our spiritual life. Things that used to be easy are going to become more difficult as life takes on different challenges, different places, different stuff. And as I was getting older, what I said was, I need to start building the disciplines in my life now to get ready for what these people are talking about with whatever 40 is going to be like. If I don't start now, when 40 comes along, it's going to be even more difficult. And spending that time with God is incredible. It's incredible for my own life. And he says, blessed is the man who listens to me. You want to be blessed, right? Blessed is the man who listens to me. watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. The first 15 minutes of your day, spending your time with Jesus, will change your life. I know because I've done it. It will change your life. And isn't it cool that God wants to meet with you too? He created you. He created the universe. He's all-powerful, all-knowing. And he says, I want to talk to you. And I want you to talk to me. It's like, God, don't you already know? Yeah, but I still want to talk to you. See what he says. See how that time, just dedicate that time. It's 15 minutes, you guys. Meet with God daily. Number 3, study and do his word. Underline, once you write it in, underline study and do his word. Psalm 1:1-3. Blessed, that word blessed again, is the man whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. I want to be someone who prospers. That might look different to me than it looks to God, but at the end of the day, I'd still like to be someone who prospers. Study and do his word. People have come up to me before and they're like, Pastor Stephen, God isn't talking to me. I go, oh, I'm sorry. What have you been reading in your Bible? And they're like, what? Like, well, he gave us 66 books of his word where he speaks to us. You know, if he's not talking to you, maybe there's something in there that he's, directing you towards. But if you don't know what's in there, if you don't study and do his word, one, you won't know what his commands are. Sometimes we ask him, God, what do you want me to do? And he's like, I already wrote it down. God, how is this supposed to go? Read about it. Study and do his word. Not only are there commands in there, but there are promises, there are blessings, things that he says, hey, I have this for you. Don't just take my word for it. We hear people talk about things, we hear stuff on the internet, wherever, and we go, whoa, that's a good word. Someone had to read that or hear it. They read it in the Bible and go, hey, it's right there. John 3:16, the most quoted verse, I think, in the entire Bible. Everyone knows it. If you don't, it's okay. Because the verse right after it, John 3:17, I think is way more powerful for our people. It says, for God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but that through him the world might be saved. How many times have we heard someone talk about condemnation or felt condemnation, felt guilt, felt shame for something? And all we had to do was read one more verse down from John 3:16 and we would know that's not from God. That God didn't send Jesus to condemn us, but to save us. And when we have that feeling, we can go, that's a lie of the enemy, and just throw it out. But people will walk for years with condemnation and guilt. They don't open up the word and go, what? God, what do you actually have for me? John 15:14, you are my friends if you do what I command. I want to be a friend of Jesus, so I actually need to read the commands that he has for me and do them. Number 4, tithe my income. This one can be tricky for people because money is so tied into who we are. We've bought into the lie that what we do is who we are. You go up to someone and you ask, so what do you do? If you're trying to get to know them, you ask, what do you do? Because that's who they are. It's their job. That's them, right? Well, no. God created each of you specifically, unique, for a plan and a purpose beyond anything we can even imagine. Things that we do, we can be proud of, but it's not who we are. But because we get paid for the thing, somewhere along the line we go, this is what I do, and now I've been paid something, so that's my value, that's my worth, that's what I've contributed into this thing, so this is where my identity is now wrapped up in. So when someone comes along and goes, hey, give me part of your identity, you go, whoa, that's mine. That's mine. God's not asking for your money. What he wants is what's behind the money. He wants your heart. He wants your heart. He says, can you trust me with this? Because your identity is not wrapped up in what you do. It's not how much you get paid. It's not even whatever it is. That's already 100% mine. The gifts, the talents, the abilities that you have, I put those there. Malachi 3:10 says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this. Isn't that cool? It's one of the things where God says, test me. And see if I don't open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have room for it. Sounds nice. I made a commitment long ago that I was not going to ever not tithe. You know, growing up in church, you can hear pastors talk about, do not rob God, right? And that stuck with me. I was like, oh, I don't want to rob God. But as I've been doing it, God's been showing me, hey, it's not about that. It's about being connected. And he has blessed me. I work here at a church and never been in a position where I'm like, oh, you know. But I'm also not getting checks that say, that like cover the 10% or the tithe, and it's like, if you know, you know, in the memo line, you know, kind of thing. It's like, oh, hey. You know, God did something different for me, and I know he did this for me because I am extremely illiterate in this kind of stuff. In 2014, BCE, before COVID era, I bought a house in Snoqualmie for $215,000, right? This is like crazy today to even think about something like that. And I had saved up for a long time, and it took all of my savings. And it's like, okay, great. It's a house, cool. Rebecca and I were married in 2018. We lived in that house. It was a great house. And in 2020, we felt like God was telling us it's time to move. It's time to move. I'm like, okay. And we decided we were going to move. We were going to move to the Ridge. And we were looking at a house, and we found one. We actually tried to get these two other houses, and they both got bought out from under us. And I remember thinking at the time, like, what? This is, God, you told us to do this. These houses are awesome. Then we look at the house that we got and go, thank you, Jesus, for not listening to me. We got in this house, and when we were going to buy it, our realtor said, so we're going to sell this house, and we're going to use the proceeds to, you know, pay for part of this house. And I said, no. And she's like, what? What do you mean, no? Look at what's happened to your house. Your house has almost doubled in value since you bought it in 2014 or so. And I said, yeah, God didn't say to sell the house. Are you sure? I remember she asked me like 5 to 7 times if I was sure. She's like, you don't understand. Things like this don't happen with houses. They don't appreciate this fast. This is crazy. And I said, yeah, I understand. We're not going to sell it. It's like, okay. So we kept the house and we rented it for a year. And then at the end of that year, God said, okay, it's time to sell the house. Okay. You guys remember in between 2020 and 2021 what happened with housing prices in the area? We were able to sell that house for more than I ever thought was even comprehensible. And I remember just thinking, God, you are so good. Because there is no way that I know enough about markets, about houses, about any of this stuff to try and time it like, oh yeah, in a year it's going to be even better, just trust me. I had no clue. We got that blessing. The first thing Rebecca and I did was we tithed on that. We said, God, thank you for this blessing. Because we know we wouldn't even have this without you. You can't outgive God. He'll do way more with the 90 than you could ever do with the 10, with the 100. Sorry. It's like the son who took all that stuff by himself, and on his own, he just squandered it all. God will work the miracle. Number 5, learn to love other believers. This one also seems like a no-brainer. It's like, of course, we're supposed to love each other, right? We're all here, we're part of the family. Well, you know, if you know anything about Christians, you know that it can be hard to love them sometimes. And it's because of that cognitive bias where we judge other people based on their actions, but ourselves on our intentions. And because sometimes some of us have read the Bible, we go, we know that you know better. People look at Christians, they go, hypocrites. And one of the reasons why, because we don't love each other very well. So choosing to learn to love other believers is a habit that we can actually work on. Hate to break it to you, but the only people in heaven are going to be Christians. So if you don't like Christians, you're not going to like heaven very much. So start now to learn to love them so that when you get to heaven, you're like, oh, okay. Even with all the faults, the hurts, and the hang-ups in the church, Jesus still says it's my bride and I love it. I love it. 1 John 4:20 says, if someone says, I love God, but hates a Christian brother or sister, that person is a liar. For if we don't love people we can see, how can we love God whom we have not seen? Learn to love. Remember, our spiritual health is measured by love. Love for God and love for others. And yeah, it can be easier to love people who are outside because we go, they don't know better. Learn to love other believers. Make it a choice. Build the habit. Choose to do it. And where do we choose to do that? Where can we do that? Do we do it in this group right here? We may worship as a crowd like this, but you can't love a crowd. No, the way you learn to love other believers is in community group, in small group. People talk about, we have the group of people and this stuff. Learn to love other believers in a community group. Sign up. It's group launch today and next week, 8 weeks. See what God will do in your life by learning to love other believers in a community group, doing life together. There are people who have been in my community group for, 6 years or more now. They are my family. My kids call them auntie and uncle. And it never would have been possible unless I had chosen, let me get connected with people. Let me be vulnerable with people. Small group is critical to growing spiritually, learning to love other believers. Number 6, learn to serve others unselfishly. Next Sunday, we've got a 301 class, so you can actually find out the gifts, the talents, and the abilities that God may have given you that you are uniquely put here to serve in the church, to serve others unselfishly. We had Nerf night here on Friday and Bluey night with our student ministries program. Pastor Tom and Jess did a great job. They are wonderful, but they couldn't have done it without the volunteers who came in. And by the way, if you find a dart on the ground somewhere, just give it to Pastor Tom. He's still collecting those. We couldn't do it without the volunteers that come around and say, these kids are worth it. These kids are worth it. I'm going to serve them unselfishly, not asking for anything in return. We might have a job and it might be something that we do, but it's not who we are, and it may not even be what we've been put on this earth for. But serving others, God says, I can give you and show you your God-given purpose. And we go, I don't want to serve. It takes stuff. No. What we're saying is actually it's going to activate something in your life that's going to give you something more back. See, every time God asks for something, he gives you more in return. Every time he says, hey, do this, what he gives out is even better. Because again, we don't want to live in chicken nugget land. We want to see what God has for us. And serving is like spiritual exercise. If we come to church, if we go to group, if we read our Bibles and we just get, what do we become? Spiritually full. Then spiritually fat. We're not doing anything with it. Serving is like spiritual exercise, going out and using the stuff that we've been fed with to then go and serve and help others. Being spiritually full might feel good, but it's not being spiritually healthy if we're not exercising the stuff that we're learning to go out and serve others unselfishly. So serve others. Number 7, pass on the good news. 2 Timothy 2:2, take the teachings that you've heard me proclaim in the presence of many witnesses and entrust them to reliable people who will be able to teach others also. There's 4 generations in this verse. It's Paul to Timothy, Timothy to the others, those reliable people to the last ones. Is anyone going to be in heaven because of you? I mean, if you don't already like the people who are going to be in heaven, you might as well start inviting people you do like. Who's going to be in heaven because of you? Because you're here today because someone else said, okay, I'm going to pass on the good news. I'm going to pass on Jesus. Matthew 28:19. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I've given you. And be sure of this, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. What if we prayed, Lord, help me bring one person? Help me bring one person. Because you don't know, that one person might be the Timothy that then teaches a bunch of others, that then goes and teaches a bunch of others. Start with one and see what God says. Be obedient in that and watch. So these are 7 things, habits, disciplines that we can start or continue to incorporate into our lives to become spiritually healthy. Not because we want to look good, but because we know that God has something better for us. The more we press into Him, the more we push to get connected to Him. We're in a race. We get to choose how to run it. Do we want to run it well? Or just keep doing what we've always been doing? I know for me, I want to run it well. Let's pray. God, thank you for each and every single person here. God, I pray that we would experience your power and presence in our life, far beyond anything we can even comprehend. Lord, to fill us up, to give us strength and wisdom and energy, capacity to be able to do these 7 things. To choose you, God, above all else. To keep our eyes fixed on you, Lord, and to see what you have for us. And I pray against the stuff that will entangle, the sin, the mess-ups, the trip-ups, that we wouldn't even worry about them, that we would cast them off and always choose you. I love you, Jesus. Pray this in your mighty name. Amen.